If you were waiting to buy a PS5 off a shelf, it looks like you're going to be waiting a lot longer. We've got a new Dead by Daylight character, some cool stuff that was found in Hogwarts Legacy, and a big update of games coming to PS Now. And before we get into all this PlayStation news, make sure you take a second to subscribe and set your notifications to all. One of my favorite games of all time is Alan Wake. It was an Xbox 360 exclusive that came to PC a little bit later and had 2 DLC packs, and then after that it had a standalone sequel spin-off thing called Alan Wake's American Nightmare, and none of it sold all too well, so that franchise kind of went away. Until Control came out in 2019, and then a year later it got its DLC pack called the Alan Wake Experience. It might have been called the Alan Wake Event, I don't know, but it was AWE, and the A and the W stood for Alan Wake. And in that DLC you kind of go rescue Alan. I don't want to spoil what happens in the main game, so kind of just like don't look up that DLC if you've never played it. Anyway, after all that happened, Remedy, the people who made all these games, signed a deal with Epic to produce a few more games. And a lot of people were wondering if one of those games would be a sequel to Alan Wake. And then over the weekend on a Taiwanese website, Alan Wake Remastered showed up with PS5 box art and a release date of October 5th this year, and that was immediately confirmed on Twitter by a huge verified leaker, and then on Monday it was officially announced that we are getting Alan Wake Remastered. The only difference between what showed up on that website and the actual info is that there's not a real release date yet other than fall, which covers like October till the end of November, I guess, so I hope they can get this out before Halloween. As for what this new release comes with, it's definitely more of a remaster than a remake. They're just going in and cleaning up the game, which is good because when it came out, it really pushed the Xbox 360 to its limits, and now it's been long enough where it's looking a little old, so I'm glad that they're going to give it a huge facelift. They're doing characters, they're doing the world, they're doing the lighting, they're making sure that all the textures are going to be 4K, and then there was a rumor that came out from someone who had heard about this remaster who said that it's going to run at 60 frames per second on the PS5 and include ray tracing. And the reason that this game absolutely needs ray tracing is that the way you play it is you hold a flashlight and you use it to aim your gun, and you have to burn off shadows from enemies before you can shoot and kill them. And once you kill them, they explode into like an explosion of light. So if you have ray tracing included in this game, on top of the fact that it's a super moody, like Washington set atmosphere that has God rays and stuff like that, I feel like it's going to go an extremely long way. But yeah, again, this is one of my favorite games of all time, and I was really itching for something new from Remedy after Control, so I hope this comes out before Halloween and I will definitely be playing it. We talked about it a couple weeks ago when it was officially announced, but the Hellraiser expansion for Dead by Daylight is finally here, and it's available now on both PS4 and PS5 for just $5. Now the reason it's so cheap is that you're only getting Pinhead. He's kind of like Leatherface, where he doesn't come along with a new map or a survivor, but just because they wanted to make sure if you mainly play a survivor, you get something out of this pack. For that $5, you get Pinhead and then a charm that's the Lament configuration. And I wasn't gonna buy this because I don't play as the killer, but I want that Lament configuration charm for my survivor. Honestly, I'm completely fine with this being a small pack that just includes Pinhead because he's really the last big killer from the 80s that's not in this game yet. And I don't know what map you could realistically pull from the movies, because it seems like with every other Hellraiser tie-in, they're going with the 3 look for him because that's the cheapest license to get. And there's not really all that awesome of locations in 3. If they did anything, I would want it to be the sweet labyrinth from the end of Hellraiser 2. That's a deep cut. The thing that's kind of frustrating about this release though is that it also comes along with 2 awesome skins for Pinhead. One of them is like a suit of hell armor for him, which I really want, and then the other one is a full-on like character conversion that turns him into another Cenobite called the Chatterer. And they all can use the same sort of ish powers, so that's not like breaking the lore of the movies or anything. The problem is, if you add up the amount of premium currency you need to get these skins, it's like $20. Honestly, I feel like they probably could have just charged like $10 for the Hellraiser pack as a whole and giving you these skins with it. Now, I'm not a huge Dead by Daylight player anymore. I played it a lot more before they even added in seasons and stuff like that, so I don't know if you can grind out Pinhead to get these skins later on, but I've got a feeling you can't, just because this game is so monetized. Like, if you want to get every killer for this game, you're going to be paying a lot of money unless you wait for a Steam sale or a Halloween sale in the Xbox or PlayStation store or something like that. But I don't know. I wish this game would kind of go back to the drawing board on the way it's monetized and kind of reorient and really focus on seasons over microtransaction skin type stuff, because they've got both in the game, but all I ever hear people talking about is stuff you can just buy for money up front. Next up, we have a quick update on Call of Duty Vanguard, because the multiplayer beta for the game is running right now on PlayStation if you pre-ordered the game, and if you didn't pre-order it, there's an open beta on PlayStation next weekend, which is pretty cool. Sony kind of took over the exclusivity window with Call of Duty. I remember in the Xbox 360 generation, every E3, Microsoft would be like, yep, we've got exclusivity on some of the map packs for these games for a little while. Everything's coming to us first. We're getting the betas first, stuff like that. And then in the PS4 generation, because the PS4 was outselling the Xbox One like 2-1 at that point, they switched over and started giving all the Call of Duty bonuses to Sony, and now it looks like that's sticking. The first Call of Duty game I put a ton of time into was Call of Duty Black Ops, and I was really excited for Cold War, but I didn't end up loving it all too much. I played a lot of it and I prestiged, but it looks like they're directly answering to that game's missteps with Vanguard, because not only are we getting a zombies mode from Treyarch, we're also getting 16 maps at launch for the main multiplayer modes. That's pretty good. Oh, and there's also a new map for Warzone that takes place in the Pacific. I'm definitely going to try that out because the map looks cool, and I really like Warzone. I downloaded it last Halloween when they added in a Leatherface skin and another skin that let you be Billy from Saw, which was great because he was just like a guy dressed up as the little puppet from Saw, and I got straight up addicted to that game, and I could totally see that happening with Vanguard. Moving from the last generation into this generation of consoles didn't really feel like it had a defined end, mainly because they're still releasing games for the last generation of consoles, but this news story kind of just made me sad because I remember picking up the game that it's about. So Metal Gear Solid 5 has some online capabilities. It has a Metal Gear Online component that nobody really plays, and then there's also this like nuke disarmament mode that you could do where people basically hacked it to figure out what would happen if you disarmed all the nukes online. So basically the online functions of Metal Gear Solid 5 haven't been active in a long time. So Konami's taking advantage of that by shutting them down today when we're recording this video on August 31st. And then by spring of next year, they're going to be shut down on the PS4, Xbox One, and PC as well. It just really makes me feel old because I remember all of the hype leading up to Metal Gear Solid 5. There was that weird thing they did where they took out the prologue to the game, which was the Ground Zeroes mode, and they completely overpriced it at $30 on the PS4 and $20 on the PS3. And then we just had a long wait for the rest of the game, but when it came out, it made a big splash. It came out right after I graduated college, and I basically played it all summer. That game is just such a fun, open world gameplay sandbox, and it was really one of the first graphical showcases on the PS4 at the time. I have such a vivid memory of when I figured out that the easiest way to beat Quiet in that game is to call in a supply drop on her head. So you would just kind of like crouch and wait for her to show up with her little sniper glint, and then you would call in a supply drop on her head, and the box would fall on her and knock her out, and it would basically just end the boss fight right there. You didn't even have to do anything. And then she would be at your mother base ready to recruit to your team. Now the story obviously has some issues in Metal Gear Solid 5. Hideo Kojima was basically ousted from Konami before he got to finish it, so by the time you get to the end of the game, it feels a little unfinished, but man, Metal Gear Solid 5 was like a highlight game of that generation. And even though the online features have been useless for a while now, the fact that they're shutting down just like feels kind of sad, a little bit nostalgic. Feels like the true end of that Kojima era at Konami. Like, I felt like we might have a return of Metal Gear when I heard that Metal Gear music in the Death Stranding director's cut trailer, but just knowing that things are shutting down for Metal Gear Solid 5 makes me feel like, no, it's really over. I was watching the Hogwarts Legacy reveal trailer the other day, and I was like, what happened to that game? Because it was announced with the PS5, and then it sort of just dropped off the map after it was delayed until 2022. But it looks like people are really excited for this game because a ton of websites are pulling anything they can from the trailer and making articles about it. And normally I don't promote this kind of stuff, but I found an article where they talked about all the different animals that showed up in the reveal trailer for this game. And Harry Potter, if you don't know, has a ton of different beasts and creatures and stuff like that that are pretty cool, and I was just surprised at how many are actually in just this one reveal trailer. I'll link it in the description if you want to go check it out. But yeah, I'm still excited for this game. Supposedly it's coming later this year. I don't know what's going on with it, but I'll just keep talking about it to keep it in the zeitgeist, you know? So we've already got the PS Plus updates for September out of the way, so let's talk about all the cool stuff coming to PS Now in the near future. Once again, we actually have some pretty good games coming to the service like Tekken 7 and Moonlighter, but there's also a ton of Final Fantasy games coming to the service, and they're being doled out drip fed over the next next few months. So right now you can go download Final Fantasy VII, not the remake. This is more of a re-release that kind of cleaned up the PS1 game and made it so you could skip through battles and stuff like that. But then you're going to get Final Fantasy VIII, then you're going to get Final Fantasy IX, then you're going to get 10 and 10-2's HD remakes, and then ultimately it's all going to wrap up with Final Fantasy XII. And I'm pretty sure there you're also getting the HD remake as well. So even though I'm not the biggest Final Fantasy fan, I'm glad they're adding all these games to the service, because even though they're also on Game Pass, they just feel at home on PlayStation. You know, like Final Fantasy in my mind is linked to PlayStation, even though most of the early games in the franchise were on Nintendo. I don't know why that is. I just feel like they're better on PlayStation, and it's good to see PS Now getting fleshed out as a real competitor to Game Pass. When it comes to the PS5 shortage, I feel like news has actually been pretty good lately, but it looks like things might be getting a little bit worse pretty quickly. So over in Japan, Toshiba actually makes some semiconductors for the PS5, the Xbox Series X, and a few other devices, and they actually put out a public apology to some of these companies that are paying them because they're not meeting 100% of the demand that these companies have. I can see why these companies would be getting a little pissed, because the demand is there, unfortunately the supply is not. But yeah, in that apology statement Toshiba made, they talked about how this shortage isn't ending anytime soon, and it could go all the way through next year and into 2023, which is insane. So it makes sense that the demand kind of can't keep up with the supply. Wait, actually reverse that. The supply can't keep up with the demand. This is obviously bad on the surface because people want PS5s and can't get them, and because of that, scalpers are going out of their way to make sure they get PS5s so that they can mark them up and sell them for that price, because they are selling for exorbitant prices still almost a year later. But the bigger issue here is that if Sony can't get enough PS5s into the wild, or even Xbox can't get enough Series X's out into the wild, that's going to cause some problems for next gen games, because if the install base is so much bigger on the PS4, why would developers ever stop making games for it, right? If they only have a few PS5s out there and they can kind of hold their games that were supposed to be next gen back and put them on PS4 as well, they're probably going to do that. I mean, Sony's very guilty of this. Right now, we know that they're putting Horizon Forbidden West on PS4 as well, which really isn't that big of a surprise since Horizon Forbidden West started development on PS4, but other games that were actually announced for just PS5, like Gran Turismo 7, are now also coming to PS4. It really is getting frustrating because I thought things were starting to get better when Sony put in that order for 12 million chips or something like that, but it looks like that's going to be more like a band-aid fix than a full-on solution, which again is frustrating. Thankfully, this can't go on forever, because as people get PS5s, the demand is going to keep going down, and then scalpers prices will go down as well, and then they'll focus on other things like PC graphics cards. But still, for right now, when people are really looking to get PS5s, and then of course this Christmas season when they're also looking to get PS5s even more than they are right now, because everyone's going to want to buy them for their kids, it's just going to keep being this endless chaos event that keeps popping up in the news. And it's just, yeah, the only word I can think of for it is frustrating. I don't want to say angering, because it's like, it's a video game console and we all have other things we could be worrying about, but it's definitely frustrating. And as much as I want to point the finger at Sony here, I don't really feel right doing it, because they're doing everything they can. It seems there were more PS5s actually sold at this point in time than there were PS4s last generation. So that kind of objectively shows that they're doing a better job than the last time around at getting these things out there, which is crazy considering how hard it is to get these consoles made in the first place. Anyway, guys, that's all the PlayStation news I have for you today. Make sure you let me know what you think down in the comments below, and remember to subscribe and set your notifications to all. As always, guys, my name is Jimmy Champagne, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.